Hi everybody, this is Steve Kallas, speaking of sports. See all our articles at westchestercountypost.com. We're going to talk today about Notre Dame football. We're going to talk big picture and game one at Louisville. As all Notre Dame fans know, Notre Dame's schedule this year has three tough, unfortunately, on the road games. Maybe the biggest game of the year is early on, third game of the year at Georgia. They go down to Athens, a very tough place to play, against a very good team. They also have to play at Michigan and the final game of the year at Stanford. We'll talk about the big picture in a few minutes, but first, let's take a look at Louisville and what potential problems they bring to the table. I think the most important thing at Louisville, believe it or not, is their new coach, Scott Satterfield. If you follow college football, you'll know one of the greatest upsets, if not the greatest upset of all time in college football, took place in 2007 when Appalachian State beat then number 5 Michigan September 1st of 2007. And Coach Satterfield was not the head coach, but he was an assistant. He was up in the booth calling all the offensive plays. And what people forget about that game is that Michigan took the lead very late in the game, 32-31, and it was Coach Satterfield's offensive calls that led Appalachian State on a 69-yard, 7-play drive to literally kick the game-winning field goal, the short field goal with 26 seconds left. Again, one of the greatest upsets ever. Flash forward 11 years to the day later, last September 1st, and he, as the head coach, took his team into Happy Valley to play Penn State, ranked number 10 in the country at the time. But what happened there was they were down late. They scored 28 points in the fourth quarter. They forced overtime. They did lose to Penn State on the road in overtime, but again, gave notice to what these guys can do. In their own little conference, they were dominant and fantastic, but to win the games they won and to take Penn State to overtime, that shows that they have a great coaching staff, and now they're all in at Louisville now. So I think the biggest threat, frankly, is how good this coach is. Thankfully for Notre Dame, I think, they haven't had a lot of recruiting. Coach Satterfield kind of complained he didn't have any time to recruit. He wasn't hired till December. So I think that's actually going to help Notre Dame in this game. Although the element of surprise is still there. Coach Kelly at his press conference said they had reviewed a lot of Appalachian State tapes. And obviously the caliber of player at Louisville should, in theory, be higher than that of Appalachian State. So one of the big problems here is the coach. They have a great coaching staff. But as you all know, players win games, not coaches. So we'll take a look more at what's going to happen with respect to the players that Louisville has. Now, Coach Kelly at his press conference said, Becton, the left tackle, I just want to read his exact quote, the left tackle at Louisville is 6'7", 368 pounds. And Coach Kelly said, quote, he will be playing in the NFL next year. And that's a big statement to make before the season starts. But we're going to find out how quick he is. Obviously, he's big enough. But, Notre Dame's very strong on the defensive end, part of their defensive line. So we'll see what happens there. He also spoke about the quarterback for Louisville. His name is Jawan Pass. And I am not kidding. His name is Pass. He's a 6'4", 240-pound quarterback who's actually known to be a pocket passer. Now, he was in competition with another guy, Malik Cunningham, who hurt his knee, so he kind of got the job by default, frankly, but is still considered to be, a D1 major college quarterback. We'll see what happens when the big rush comes, and I think the big rush is going to come. A couple of other things about Louisville. Coach Satterfield admitted they're not very deep. Again, he just got in. He didn't have time to recruit. They're going to be very good eventually. I just don't think it's going to happen early this year, maybe not this year at all. Let's turn around and take a little bit of a look at Notre Dame, of course. Ian Book, he came in game 4 last year, played great most of the year, had trouble in the Clemson game. He was criticized for not being able to throw the long ball against Clemson, but I have to say, and I'm sure you all watched the game, he was under siege virtually that whole game. And the notion that he's going to step up and throw it 50 yards downfield or 40 yards downfield, in retrospect, seemed like not a very good idea. Having said that, Book's going to has taken all the first team reps this year. I think he's going to improve just by the fact that he wasn't the starter at the beginning of last year, and he is the starter this year, also with, nine wins under his belt before the Clemson game. So I think the quarterback is not a problem. I think what you have to focus on, at least in game one for Notre Dame, is their receiving core. You know, it looked like, even though Boykins is in the NFL, it looked like they were going to be pretty loaded at receiver, but Komet and Young both got broken collarbones, which is obviously not very good. Komet's coming back sooner, but neither of them are available for this first game. And as for the mystery of Kevin Austin, you guys know as much as I do. You know, Coach Kelly shut down questioning about him at his press conference, and there have been reports back and forth. Some say he's going to miss the whole season. Some say he's only going to miss 4 games. The problem is right now they need receivers, and he is not going to play in game one. They do have Chase Claypool, who's very good. They do have Chris Fink, who's old, reliable. You know, they're going to give Lawrence Keys a chance. The interesting thing about Keys, as you guys know, is he has tremendous speed. And interestingly, Coach Kelly at the press conference said, you know, this guy does something that no other receiver can do on my team. He can run at full speed and catch the ball. I don't know if that's an indictment of anybody else, but Keys has great speed, and if he can actually get in the open, get a slant or something, he could turn a 10-yard slant into, you know, 50, 60-yard touchdown. He's young, but they do have enough receivers. They also have Armstrong, who was a receiver last year. Now he's their running back, but he can certainly line up in the slot as well. So I think they still have a lot. I just thought they were going to have a lot more than they're going to have, at least for game one. So how does it look for this game? You know, Notre Dame really shouldn't have a problem with Louisville. The element of surprise is there. There's no game film yet of Louisville being Louisville. But again, I think the talent level is different. Again, I think Coach Satterfield's going to do a great job there. Coach Kelly has great respect for him, and vice versa. You know, they were, I won't say blowing kisses at each other in their respective press conferences, but clearly there's a high amount of respect on both sides. Coach Kelly because of what he's done his whole career, Coach Satterfield because of what he's done at Appalachian State. I think at the end of the day, Notre Dame should win this game. If they don't, that would be a tremendous red flag for Notre Dame and their season. I want to go just briefly now, broad strokes on Notre Dame's big picture season. As we talked about, the biggest game of the year, everybody knows, is the third week at Georgia. That's going to be a tough game to win right now. It doesn't look like they really can win it, but let's watch the first 2 weeks and see what happens. It's college football. Anything can happen. Georgia, a very tough place to play down in Athens. But I think there's 2 ways that Notre Dame gets to the playoff. If they can possibly win at Georgia, which would be a tremendous win, a win that would bring them up immediately into the top 5, I would think, if not the top 3. If they can win at Georgia, they have a good chance to run the table. We'll talk about Michigan in a second and Stanford. But if they can win at Georgia, they can go undefeated, and that'll get them back into the playoff. However, if they lose to Georgia, which right now seems most likely, but you know, that's why they play the games, we'll have to see and see how they perform the first 2 weeks. Even if they lose at Georgia, in my opinion, they can run the table. At Michigan, you know, Jim Harbaugh has not been, many thought he would just come in and dominate college football. Hasn't worked out that way. I don't think Michigan, I think they're a little overrated and have been the last couple of years. So if they can beat Michigan, I think they can. If they can beat Stanford, they've kind of taken a step backwards. Those are their 3 toughest games. If they win 3 of those games, they're going. If they win 2 of those games, I think they can run the table and go to the college playoff, which is obviously going to be the goal again this year. I think Notre Dame can do it. I think they have a good chance to make it one way or the other. They have 2 paths to the Final Four. But let's first watch them play against Louisville, and then the following week against New Mexico, and that'll set them up for the big game at Georgia. So Steve Kallas speaking of sports. Please go to westchestercountypost.com to see all sports and other things on our website, and we'll see you again next time.